Welcome to the last calm-ish day before the free agency storm. It is March 12th. It's also Academy Award night. I don't know if we'll get to that at all. If you want Academy Awards picks, go to the PFF Printing Press Discord. There'll be plenty in there. We have got a full slate of football to talk about. We're, of course, going to talk about the Bears and Panthers trade up to 1. Is CJ Stroud truly a lock to go number 1 overall? What other big deals might be happening as well? It's going to be great. We're going to preview free agency with Brad and Arjun. Let's rock. All right, Brad. No longer do you have to worry about your Bears picking a defensive player at number 1 overall. Obviously, everyone has seen these trade details by now, but just to be clear, the Panthers gave up pick number 9, 61, a 2024 first rounder, 2025 second rounder, and wide receiver DJ Moore. In return, they received the Bears' number 1 overall pick, and immediately CJ Stroud's odds went from was about plus 250, plus 300, and at some point it was like plus 500. Now he is a minus 300 favorite to go number 1 overall to the Carolina Panthers. So there's a lot to unpack here. Let's start with this, Brad. This deal, they gave up a hefty amount. Is it fair to say that they were not the only ones trying to move up to 1? What can you tell us about this, how this deal happened?
Yeah, I can tell you a couple other teams in the top 10 were at least having some conversations to varying degrees of how hard were they pushing to actually get this deal done. I think another team in the bottom half of the top 10 was the closest, or the runner-up, so to speak, had a similar package with a bunch of early picks and also a veteran pass catcher that, a bit older than DJ Moore. So I think Chicago wanted to go that route. And also you look at Moore, on a 3-year deal for less than $17.5 million per year remaining, 26 years old, or will be in week 1 next year. And I think the big thing too is everyone keeps looking at him in a vacuum. Is he a number 1? Look, he's a top 20, top 25, whatever receiver. But also the biggest thing about AJ Brown going to Philadelphia that we don't talk about enough is it's also the knockdown effect of now Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney are your number 2 and number 3 in whatever order they want to be. AJ Brown made Devontae Smith a better player. And so that's part of it too. It's all the context. So I think it's a fair deal for both sides. But yes, I am ecstatic as a Bears fan. I think Ryan Poles did very well.
What do we think about the odds here now? So Arjun, in the Discord, which hopefully everyone is part of right now, if you had been in there, you got some pretty darn good odds in terms of CJ Stroud 1 overall, as well as Panthers to end up picking 1st overall. But do we think that's locked in? He's minus 300. Bryce Young is plus 300. Anthony Richardson plus 450, and then Will Levis is 25 to 1.
Yeah, so I thought even before the trade happened that the Panthers really liked Stroud, and going up to 1, I thought, Stroud was the pick at that time. The odds reopened at Stroud minus 140. It immediately got bet up to minus 300. The night of the trade, Stroud was like minus 420 on DraftKings. So there's a huge, shift in odds. I think it's come back down a little bit. Stroud is now minus 330, about minus 320 on FanDuel, DraftKings. So right now, it does seem like Stroud is the favorite, but there have been some weird reports saying that the Panthers kind of want to move down, recoup some of the picks, that, Stroud might not be the guy. There has been reports that it seems like David Tepper really likes Bryce Young, but the coaching staff likes CJ Stroud. So I don't necessarily think Stroud is a lock. I think the odds really shifting in his favor right as he got traded does signal that maybe he's the favorite, but I don't think it's a lock right now. And I think a lot could change between now and then. And depending on how much Tepper wants to kind of influence the draft, I think we could see maybe Bryce Young go number 1 overall.
Buying that, Brad?
What? Say again?
You buying that?
So here's the thing. In the same way that I was saying, how Will Levis was a good bet before, I think Bryce Young is a decent bet now too. Look, if I had to guess right now who is going to go first, I do think it is CJ Stroud, but maybe this is a way you can just play these markets and just arbitrage and just get value and plus 300 or so odds on every guy. I don't know if I buy the trade down. I think it's a little strange. I think to go up to one and like the same night, like hours later, kind of get it out there that you're willing to then move back down potentially. My question is, who do you actually think? Like, it's basically you're talking to Houston, right? Because you're probably not taking the risk of going to 4 with Indy because maybe someone trades up to number 3 with Arizona. And so, if you were comfortable taking the 3rd or 4th quarterback, you probably would have just traded with Arizona instead of going all the way up to Chicago. So to me, it's essentially saying, hey, Houston, we think we're going to now take your guy who we really like, and the only way you're going to get him is if you give us something. Sure, it won't be a ton. We're not going to get a future first out of it, but hey, maybe we get a 2nd-round pick or something like that, and we'll go back down to 2, let you get your guy at 1. If that is the thought process there, which, like I said, is the only thing that makes sense to me, that kind of signals Bryce Young to me. I think Houston is a Bryce Young destination. I think it makes a ton of sense there. I'm not sure they're a great fit for CJ Stroud for a handful of reasons. And so that's kind of the gamesmanship I see there. And hey, I mean, you got to try everything you can, but it's bizarre the way it was played out for like an hour after the draft. Like, hey, by the way, though, I know we just moved heaven and earth and we have literally no wide receivers on our roster, but now we're going to move down a little bit, right afterwards.
That would be unconscionable, in my opinion, to make that big of a move and then be willing to move back. Like, you've got to feel pretty good about your guy there. And it actually reminds me of the Niners move up to 3. And I think this is actually, obviously this is a bigger move in the sense that they're getting all the way up to 1, but similar in terms of how far they're moving, right? And the idea being, like, we actually haven't made our decision yet. The difference here is that you don't have to worry about anyone else picking any of the other players, right? So, it just seems absolutely ridiculous that you would move up that far and not know who you wanted. We've talked about this a bunch, but Josh McCown is on record saying that he thinks CJ Stroud is the next Joe Burrow, which, look, if you think you have the next Joe Burrow at number 1 overall, then yeah, you are trading up to go grab him. The thing that you said, I think it was, I can't remember which one said this, but if they end up picking Bryce Young because David Tepper likes Bryce Young and the coaching staff likes CJ Stroud, like, punt that entire organization into the sun, like the owner walking in and going, you know what, I kind of like this guy. Like, what is going on here? That would be really magical. But for them to trade down, theoretically, right? So the Cardinals aren't going to move up. If the Texans aren't buying that, they want Bryce Young, or maybe the Texans are like, screw it. Like, we just don't want to give up more. We don't have anybody. They would have to move back to 4, basically.
Right, with Indy. And at that point, it's like, Indy doesn't seem to have been very involved in the trade talks for number 1 overall, at least what I heard. They were not one of the teams making the bigger pushes. And then if you're Carolina, you're at the risk of someone jumps ahead of you to Arizona at 3, and then you're taking the 4th option. Mm-hmm. So you just traded a ton and are then getting, I guess you always say like, oh, we like a couple of the guys, but that would be insane to me. You're not going to get, I don't think either CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, whether that's, Tepper, who Tepper wants or who the building wants. Neither guy is going to be there at 4 in my estimation. So I think it's literally just a conversation with Houston. I guess I'll say it. Look, it's not definitive. It's not, teams work around these things, but I think it's notable that CJ Stroud is repped by the same agent that reps Deshaun Watson. Maybe there were some kind of, there are some hard feelings there, or it's not necessarily, indicative of a great future relationship. Again, I don't know anything to that. Yeah, I don't know anything to that regard. That could change, but that's just what jumped out to me because the leak makes no sense. And the last piece on Tepper, which Arjun, I think there's been reports about that too. Like, he does seem like he's maybe trying to take his thumb off the scale a little bit compared to the past. Maybe realizing how bad his thoughts have probably been the last couple of years. If he was pushing to bring in Baker Mayfield and all these quarterbacks that have stunk, maybe that was Matt Rule. We don't know, but yeah, I think they will stay at 1. I do think, though, if you have a CJ Stroud ticket at plus 300 or whatever, like a lot of us do, I would go out there and put some on Bryce Young now and just have both guys at 3-1 odds to go first overall.
Yeah, he's 3-1 right now. Can you is there a market for who picks number one closed at this point? I don't see it on FanDuel.
Arjun, you had that offshore, right?
Yeah, it was yeah, so that's gone. It was on Bet Online first, and then DraftKings put it up, and then FanDuel put it up, and then weirdly enough, I mean, both DraftKings and FanDuel opened at plus 400 and plus 300 respectively. It got bet down pretty quickly, and obviously we signaled it in the Discord. It went from like plus 450 to plus 370 pretty quick. And then I think right before the trade happened, Panthers were like plus 170, and then the market left. So once the market was closed or didn't show up on FanDuel, I'm like, okay, something's probably going to happen soon. And a couple minutes later, the trade happened. So yeah, market's not up. I think the only markets that you could bet for number one overall are just the quarterback props or who should be picked.
Yeah. What do we think this does to the rest of the top 10? Does it increase the chances of more trades happening? Are there any kind of particular player or team fits that you guys see now, kind of coming into the light? Maybe it's Chicago, for example, moving down to 9. But what does this do? Start with you, Arjun, here. What does this do to the rest of the top 10, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's notable that, the Panthers weren't the only team in the top 10 that were willing to trade up to 1. I think Brad said the Colts weren't super involved, so maybe they're not even looking to move up to 3. But when it comes to the quarterbacks being selected, I think someone put out a tweet saying we could see 4 quarterbacks in the top 4 go, just like 1, 2, 3, 4, just because some teams are really desperate. And one team I think I would look at are the Las Vegas Raiders, where they're sitting at 7. They're behind the Colts. They're behind the Seahawks and Lions. Like, if they stay put, they're not getting a quarterback, in my opinion. So if they trade up to 3, they would be a team that would select the 3rd best quarterback. To me, that would probably be Anthony Richardson. And right now they're plus 550 on DraftKings to select it, to be the team that goes that selects Anthony Richardson. So if you think the Raiders are continue to be aggressive in getting a quarterback, I think putting some money down on plus 550 for them to select Anthony Richardson in the draft would be a smart bet there.
Well, they've got just real quick, Brad. Like, if you put a couple other pieces into that, and that's why I'm going to kick it to you. Like, they were supposedly in on Rodgers. It seems like Rodgers is, it's either New York or bust, right? And then you go, okay, Derek Carr's gone. Who's like there still? It's like, are you going to bring in Jimmy G? Like, so I guess my question to you, Brad, is like, are the Raiders going to have Jimmy G starting quarterback? Are they tanking with Devontae Adams, or are they going to draft a rookie?
And that's where I think it's very interesting, because I think Houston and Las Vegas are the only teams left that would be in the Jimmy G sweepstakes. I am of the belief that Jimmy G will be a Texan at some point in the near future.
Oh no!
Yeah,
I have to buy a Jimmy G Texans jersey.
You got to get it. Yeah, Bobby Slowick and Jimmy G are 2 favorite people going to the Texans. I think you gotta buy in. But yeah, so no, look, I think that makes the most sense. For me with Las Vegas, you can't cut Derek Carr and then get Derek Carr again.
Hey.
Right? Like, you have to. You're right. That was insulting to Derek Carr. You're right. I agree with you.
That's
so it's like, either go get Rodgers or go get a rookie. So for me, I think they make a ton of sense to go to 3. Here's the thing, though. I think every team picking from 4 through 7, so Indy, Seattle, Detroit, and Las Vegas, could all go to 3. I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams go to 3. And the target would probably be Anthony Richardson at that point, if it goes Stroud, Young, or Young, whatever the case may be at 1, 2. And then I'll tell you this: Carolina going to 1 and not going to 3. Maybe they think that, okay, we just got ahead of Houston for their guy. What if Houston also now says, I know it sounds crazy, but they signed Jimmy G and they actually don't take a quarterback? Maybe they trade to 4 with, the in-division Colts, or they trade to 5 or 6 or 7. Like, are they now a trade down candidate potentially? They want to get Will Anderson or something like that, and then punt it once more. They would, in theory, have 3 first-round picks in 2024. Still probably pick relatively high, and maybe try to use all that ammo to go up and get a guy. So I think there are more trades coming in this draft in the top 10. I don't know if they'll happen, this early. But the movement is not done, in my opinion, in this top 10 or in this top 5, really.
the teams that are tank options is an interesting one to watch, right? So you think about like the Seahawks are a good example. They're not a tank option. So this is the highest that they're going to get in a while. Like this fifth pick, I mean, they hit a home run. They traded Russell Wilson, who has gone from, the gleaming, fast, awesome car into a pumpkin. Like clock struck midnight, and they recouped the fifth overall pick. You're probably not getting that again. You signed Geno, he's going to be probably decent. The Colts are on the other side of things. We're like, if they tank, like they could lose every game. I mean, the exception that they're in a terrible division, but like they could go over and have Caleb Williams. You look at Houston, I think that's a great call out, right? They could lose a ton of games and pick number 1 overall. Interestingly for Carolina, like they almost won the division last year. They're in such a terrible division. Frank Reich is a good enough coach that you're probably not. So I can see that mentality of like, okay, we're going to go up to 1 overall. I do think it's interesting that they think Stroud is worth going up to 1 overall for, to be perfectly honest with you. The Raiders don't strike me as a team that can tank. No. The Lions are not a tankable team, right? So the Lions are similar to the Seahawks in the sense that like they got a pick that they didn't really deserve. Are they going to use that? Can they use that pick? So it makes sense that there's kind of still movement to go. What do you think, Arjun, are the ways potentially to bet this? Like, is it Raiders Richardson? That's an interest. It's plus 550.
Yeah, Raiders Richardson or Lions Richardson. I think those are the two teams where they have like a really good system in place for a rookie to step in, potentially. Even the Lions, where they can afford to let this super raw prospect sit a whole year and then throw to Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams behind one of the best offensive lines in football. And so, yeah, those are the two teams I think would be bettable for me for Anthony Richardson. With the Colts, it's tricky because I think Steichen has done a lot of great work with some of these toolsy quarterbacks like Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert, where, Anthony Richardson's arm is comparable to Justin Herbert, while in terms of its like arm strength, not accuracy. And then Richardson is comparable to Hurts with his legs. So I could see the Colts doing it, but I think if I had to, I've already put money down on Richardson to the Lions at like 9-1. I would consider hedging that a little bit with Raiders, plus 500, plus 700. But yeah, I think those are the two teams who I think would make a move for Richardson, given how good their infrastructure is to support a rookie quarterback.
What I see on FanDuel right now, by the way, is Colts. This is team to draft Anthony Richardson. Colts plus 350, Seahawks and Panthers, which is interesting, both plus 450. Really interesting. And then Raiders 7-1, Lions and Ravens are 10-1. Both really, really fascinating. I mean, the Ravens having the same odds as Lions. And I know that these aren't like the most liquid markets on planet Earth, so not the most scrutinized odds out there. But it's very interesting to see the market think that the Lions and the Ravens are as likely to go pick Anthony Richardson. Am I reading that wrong, Brad? Is there any smoke to that fire?
I think it's very possible. I think, like you said, you view it in a way as if you're playing with house money when you have a top 10 pick that is not your own, and you're telling yourself, we are not going to be picking this high. And like you said, not only are they good rosters, good teams, but in the bad NFC conference, I mean, if the Lions lose, if the Packers lose Aaron Rodgers, the Lions might win the NFC North 2 months into the season. So, the Vikings just cutting their entire roster, and I guess the Bears are making moves, but they would definitely be the heavy favorite at that point. So, yeah, I love that one. I think Seattle and Detroit at 5 and 6. Both need that long-term answer. Geno is basically on a 1-year or 2-year deal. Goff has 2 years remaining. And Richardson is just, that guy that you do probably want to sit for a year, but then the ceiling is as high as it possibly gets. You're not going to be in the Caleb May or Drake May or Caleb Williams sweepstakes next year. I think the Detroit Lions, if I had to pick one in particular, really stick out to me as a very interesting option.
At 10-1. I mean, the Raiders also make sense. I just don't understand where the Raiders go. Like, to me, it's just, if you took out what they did last year, which was go all in on getting Devontae Adams, they signed Chandler Jones as well. This roster is not very good. The division is great. Like, I would probably just call it a day and, try to get a generational quarterback. But maybe you can't do that. You also are hosting the Super Bowl next year, and you go, hey, the Eagles with Jalen Hurts made it to the Super Bowl. Like, let's just take our shot here and see if we can get them at 7-1. Okay, let's move on a little bit here. So the Aaron Rodgers deal, basically being reported that this is like up to Aaron Rodgers. He chooses to go to the Jets. It's a done deal. Is it as simple as that, Brad, or is it more to it?
I think it is pretty much, if Rodgers wants to play in New York, he'll be there. Like, it's more down to him. I think the teams have, we saw the report from Pelissero, the term's not agreed to, but I think they will be agreed to if Rodgers says, signs off on it. And it's starting to wonder if he does just retire. Yeah, it's strange. It is $60 million he can make next year. And look, for fully guaranteed does not include if you retire. You would not make that money. But yeah, it's weird how it's dragging out. I guess it shouldn't be that weird because Rodgers, has been the focal point of coverage for a long time, this offseason. But I think it gets done. I think it gets done in the next 24 hours still at this point. The Jets are doing business. The Jets just extended a Q Williams on their team, but it was Quincy Williams, not Quinnen Williams. Breaking news for the pod. I think it will get done. It's probably a matter of figuring out the contract to a degree, more than figuring out the trade compensation.
Jets plus 260 right now. Dolphins plus 350. Bills plus 105. That's to win the NFC East. We've talked about the Dolphins. So Jalen Ramsey is now a Dolphin. Everyone's putting all these graphics together with Tua and the rest of the Dolphins. And I can't help but wonder if that's a little premature. There's been a little, kind of chatter around Brady potentially coming back. Which should be really fascinating. But it seems here that, obviously the markets are pricing in Rodgers to the Jets. Does that make you like the Dolphins more? I don't know. I think that the Dolphins still at plus 350. I don't know. Maybe you disagree, Arjun, but it still seems like the right bet in that division.
Yeah, I think. Well, I do think it's interesting. The Bills are not even minus money anymore. Josh Allen right now is far and away the best quarterback in that division. I would say he's like a tier above Rodgers, even if Rodgers goes to the Jets. But again, Rodgers, it could just be one of those things where new situation, new state of mental health or whatever, and he's able to thrive there. He had two of his best seasons with Nathaniel Hackett. And I think one thing that maybe isn't talked about, the Jets offensive line could be really good, assuming Mekhi Becton, comes back to full strength. They'll have at least four real quality guys with him, Dwayne Brown, Laken Tomlinson, and Vera Tucker. They're obviously going to lose their center, but when you have a 39-year-old Aaron Rodgers who's been in the league for 15 plus years, who's seen every defense, he doesn't need a center to call out pass protections. He can do that on his own. So I don't think, the Jets situation is that bad. And I think it is a pretty good situation for Rodgers to step into. With that being said, I do think the Dolphins would still probably be my bet, just because you have, again, elite coaching on both sides of the ball. And now Ramsey allows Vic Fangio to kind of be as multiple as he wants to. I am very curious to see how much Ramsey plays in the slot this year. Kader Kahu, who graded out pretty well by our coverage grades, was their primary slot corner. But if Ramsey does play about 200, 300 snaps in the slot this year, I wonder, if that takes Kahu off the field or if that moves him outside. I think there's a lot of interesting things that could go on with the Dolphins. And I think Vic Fangio is going to have a great time kind of scheming everything up.
I don't think there's a reason to believe that Ramsey is washed in any way, shape, or form. I think that's the interesting, kind of component about this is he's still been playing at a really, really high level. You have Xavier Howard, Byron Jones is kind of never really lived up to what they had hoped, on the other side of Xavier Howard. But you think about those other teams, right? The Bills and the Jets. What have we talked about the Bills needing for a while is another receiver. They have Stephon Diggs. The Dolphins are in a great spot to be hey, someone else is going to beat us. Dawson Knox is going to turn into Travis Kelce here for you guys to beat us. Hey, Garrett Wilson, great rookie year. Someone else going to beat us here. Braxton Berrios, you're going to have to show up and, go off in this game.
He's cut.
Oh, he is? They cut him?
Yeah. No longer a Jet.
No.
Yeah.
Honey Nut Berrios. You hate to see that.
You hate to see that.
That's back to my point though. Like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Who else is going to beat us? So I like that a lot. It really does make me wonder though, is this a sign of confidence in Tua? Is it we're going all in on a rookie, deal quarterback? Or is this signaling that they've got some other move? Because now you could believe in Tua's talent and still be like, we don't know if this guy can survive the season. Like, after what happened, I keep bringing this up. I think it's a real thing. Maybe it's not, but
yeah. I found it very interesting. They said they're going to exercise his 5th-year option. They're the first team for this class to come out and say that. It's due in like May, so there's no rush to do that right now. And those are fully guaranteed now. So I guess injury guarantees would scare you with Tua anyway. But yeah, I think it is let's just spend as much money as humanly possible around Tua before, and maybe you just still don't pay him, you don't extend him, but you say, we have 2 more years where he's not expensive, and hopefully he stays healthy, and we'll just do everything we can around it. I think that is a good bet because, I guess if the Jets get Rodgers, they're tough, but the Bills really don't have much room to do a lot of things. They extended Matt Milano today, which did clear some cap space, but again, you're paying more. You're going to lose some important players like Tremaine Edmonds to free agency. I'm sure he's good as gone at this point. Coming off his best year, like the AFC East, I don't think the odds should be that strong for Buffalo as they are. I think it is a lot more wide open than it looks on the market.
So does this clean make it hard for a Lamar trade, harder or maybe impossible for a Lamar trade?
To Miami specifically?
Yeah.
Yeah, realistically, you have to have somewhere else for Tua to go. Otherwise, you're not going to do it, right? So unless he's going back to Baltimore, or unless you're sending him somewhere else, you're not going to do it. At this point, I don't know. At this point, I'd be kind of surprised if anyone signs Lamar to an offer sheet. I think he's just stuck, and it is very interesting. You mentioned like Carolina moving up that far, or we're talking about Las Vegas, like Vegas and Indy, like. The thing is, it makes sense for both of them. Neither of those teams came out and said we're not in the sweepstakes there, which I think is very interesting. But neither owner can afford, the putting the fully guaranteed money, and that's the thing. Those are 2 owners that cannot do that. So if Lamar is not going to bend with his with his drafting team of the Ravens that are a good organization, why would he go against his precedent with all due respect, the Colts and Raiders?
Yeah, and they can wait. You mentioned this, I think, on the last episode. They can wait until after the draft. So if you sign him after the draft, then the 2 first-rounders become the upcoming years. So you might say to yourself, well, I don't want to give up, the 7th or 8th or whatever pick it is, right? I'm going to wait. So we shouldn't expect to see anything before the draft, I guess is what is the takeaway.
I think it's a good point. That's a good point. If it is some of these teams that have not come out, Washington, I guess, is picking in the middle of the draft. But yeah, like the teams that have not said anything yet, they would all do it, in my estimation, after the draft to keep these, top 10 picks safe. And then in their minds, of course, we're going to give, the 20th pick or worse, the next 2 years.
Yeah. Okay. By the way, go to pff.com, check out the free agency grades. They are live every single time that there's a signing, a trade, any transaction that happens over the next however many weeks. Brad and team, Arjun, great group of guys that are going to be in there grading each of these deals from many different perspectives, right? Both on the field fit, draft compensation, team fit as well with some of the other analysts that are out there. Deron Payne signed a 4-year extension. I think that's recent news, even more recent than Jalen Ramsey being traded. Does that change anything now that he's for sure staying in Washington, guys? Is there something that we can glean from that about where other players might go, or maybe where the draft might head?
Yeah, so I think the Payne deal is amazing for Deron Payne. That's a huge deal. That's 25% more in terms of average annual value than what Jonathan Allen got, which is pretty crazy. I'm not sure that the difference is that much, even when accounting for the inflation of the cap. But I think this is going to signal that the interior defensive lineman market is going to be booming this offseason. It's going to start in free agency, where we see guys like Javon Hargrave and Draymond Jones get big deals. And then, I mean, we talk about Jeffrey Simmons, Quinnen Williams, Christian Wilkins, Dexter Lawrence, that legendary 2019 class. I mean, they're all going to get probably upwards of $22 million or more. I think the name to watch to me is Draymond Jones. He's coming off his rookie contract. He's much younger than Javon Hargrave. And as one person told me, like, they're expecting him to get at least 18 million. Like, they think someone's going to throw a bag at him. And I think, he could fit in a variety of schemes. And yeah, I think just because of how Duran's market is, I think he's going to get at least like 18 million on the open market, depending on, and he's probably gone from Denver at this point.
By the way, the Duran Payne deal, 4 years, 90 million, 22 and a half average per year, 60 million guaranteed. That was even richer than, Brad, your projected contract, but still pretty on the mark, on the money there. You had 4 years, 80 million. That's a 20 mil per year average, 55 guaranteed. So pretty darn close. By the way, you can get all of those on the PFF free agency rankings, courtesy of Brad Spielberger. So, Brad, I take it you think, along with Arjun, right, that this signals a pretty big year. Does this signal, Jalen Carter going higher? Does this signal other defensive interior players going higher in the draft?
I think it's a great question because it ties in just to the wide receiver situation last offseason where they all got paid, and then there was a run on the draft class. And yes, it was a great draft class, but you have teams, the Saints trading up for Chris Olave, the Lions trading up from 32nd up to 12th to take Jameson Williams. Like, it wasn't just a run on receivers; it was an all-out arms race. So not only do we get Duran Payne now, we're going to get Quinnen Williams, Dexter Lawrence, Jeffrey Simmons. I think those guys are going to get now, especially with this Duran Payne deal, they're going to get $25 million plus per year. I genuinely believe that. So I do. I think Carter, again, the legal situation separate, but all the good interior defensive linemen viewed in this class, even a guy like Elijah Cansey, maybe if you thought he was a top 15 pick because he's undersized, he's now maybe a top 10 pick because there's just so much value in this position. It's going to have a market reset, a long overdue market reset, frankly. I mean, Duran Payne just tied Aaron Donald's extension from 2018. That was still the number one deal on the market before Donald himself topped it with his raise last year. So, like, in my mind, we still really haven't seen that reset, but we're going to get it this offseason with a lot of deals. And then, as Arjun mentioned, Draymond Jones probably going to get 17, 18 plus. And Javon Hargrave is now going to try to get 20 plus at this point following that Payne extension. So, yes, I think that is an interesting thought on the draft because it's not, I don't think it's viewed as a phenomenal, interior defensive line draft, but depth, I think, is there. There's also those premier guys like a Jalen Carter and a Elijah Cansey and whoever, Brian Breesy, I think not quite in the caliber, but nevertheless, they could go earlier than we expect.
Yeah. Carter's 4-1 to be first defensive player drafted. Will Anderson -200, Tyree Wilson +350. Obviously the legal thing seems to be what's holding that back. But I guess if the legal thing goes away, right, he's probably minus money favorite. Would you guys agree?
Say it again.
So if the legal thing goes away, so let's say it gets, kind of figured out, and I'm not saying that it should be, I'm just saying, like, let's assume that happened. Jalen Carter would be a minus money favorite here to go first defensive player drafted.
I think so. I think Houston is super high on Will Anderson, so it'd be interesting, but I think it would be them two close to even money, and then no one else really kind of in the conversation.
Yeah. So Houston's high on Will Anderson, but they're taking the QB.
I think they go either way. I think the crazy thing is at this point, maybe they do just, maybe try to trade down a little bit. Let's say someone wants to jump up with them, go to 5 or 6 or 7 or whatever, and try to see if you could still land, maybe go to 5 and see if you could still get Will Anderson. I don't know. I think it's possible.
What do you think about that, Arjun?
Yeah, I don't think it's completely out of the question if they go down to 5 and say Arizona State's put at 3. I did hear a little bit that they are very interested in Tyree Wilson at 3, even if Will Anderson's still there. So I'm not saying go bet Tyree Wilson, but I do think, like, it is a possibility that Gannon and Austin Ford kind of go with this athletic freak over the production guy. Think about what the tight ends drafted or brought in when, in terms of their edge rushers. Bud Dupree, pretty athletic. Harold Landry, pretty athletic. Both of them kind of like speed guys, I would say. Tyree Wilson really is like a just athletic guy, super long arms. So it wouldn't shock me if Wilson even went before Anderson. And teams love betting on upside. And Will Anderson's probably the best player in this class, just in terms of like just a pure player. But Wilson just might have more upside based on his athletic traits. So yeah, I definitely don't think it's a lock that Anderson's the first guy taken, or even Carter, just because there is a lot of uncertainty with how good Tyree Wilson's athletic profile is. So if Texans do go down to 5, they could still land Will Anderson.
Yeah, that's interesting. I seems to me like there might be a little value on Wilson and or Carter at basically 4-1 each of those guys. Is there anything? No news has come out on Carter's kind of legal stuff, right, Brad? What do we expect?
Nothing new. Yeah, nothing new there. So we're just kind of waiting to see the situation. Like you said, though, like if it does stay at just misdemeanors, and again, as always, not trying to downplay the situation, but I mean, this is how we're just trying to reflect what the NFL does. If there's not a felony, felony arrest or felony whatever conviction or anything like that, like I don't think it's going to kill his stock. I think he'll still be a top 10 pick.
Okay. All right, we are on the eve of things happening. So let's make some predictions here. I'm very curious what you guys think we're going to see. What are some of the kind of crazier things or more interesting things that we're going to see? We'll start with you, Brad. Make some predictions for what we see this week. You're going to be covering it all for us. You'll be on social media. You'll be on the website. Maybe you'll be on TikTok doing some dances. I don't know. After Victor Hovland came top 10, maybe that is what you'll be doing. But make some predictions for us.
Yeah, I'll be in studio. So if the studio has TikTok capabilities, then I'll be firing them off.
Is that what you need?
Yeah. I need the good lighting for my TikTok dances. So I think on the first day, I think we're going to see Tremaine Edmonds, Mike McGlinchey get some huge deals, and Jawan Taylor. I'll throw out some teams for those guys. I think for Edmonds, I think Houston and Chicago are interesting. For McGlinchey, I think a lot of teams that run outside zone, Titans, Bears also in that one as well. And then for Jawan Taylor, I think Kansas City is interesting there. Obviously, have both tackles now. They're going to hit free agency. Maybe they make a splash there on a good young right tackle. Draymond Jones, the Denver Broncos interior defender. And I think another guy who's going to get a monster deal, as Arjun mentioned. I also think maybe the Bears, but could see a handful of teams there as well. There's going to be a lot of spending right away. I don't know why everyone's downplaying this free agency. There's plenty of good players, and I think it's going to be pretty active starting tomorrow at noon.
Arjun, what about you?
Yeah, I'm curious to see if we get a repeat of the Bengals signing signing Alex Kappa situation where the clock hit 12. At 12:01, Adam Schefter tweets out that the Bengals are going to sign Alex Kappa to a 3-year deal. So obviously the legal tampering period begins at 12. The deals are already probably hammered out ahead of time. So I am curious to see when the first deal will happen. But on a more serious note, I do think the linebacker market is super intriguing to me. I know we just got the news about the Quincy Williams deal, a 3-year, $18 million deal. I mean, there were some linebackers I was pretty high on compared to even Brad's projections. And I feel like now that we will see some contracts where last year, there's players where they're only making $3-4 million a year, where this year I think some of the mid-tier linebackers could be seeing upwards of $7-8 million, even $9 million a year. So pretty curious to see where some of the veteran guys like Bobby Wagner and Eric Hendricks end up. And yeah, just to see just based on that Quincy Williams deal, how that affects other deals in the market, even if some of these linebackers are going outside of the teams that drafted them.
That deal, real quick, I texted a league source in the middle of the show about that deal. I said, did every off-ball linebacker's just asking price just go up with this Quincy Williams extension? And he said, that is probably the floor for a lot of them now. Yeah. So, I mean, he's a solid, good young player, been good opposite CJ Mosley, obviously maybe trying to curry some favor and extending his brother, Quinnen Williams. But I mean, that is a very strong deal considering how deep the off-ball linebacker market is. One guess is, it's not a good draft class. So maybe they all do well. But that is, I think it's not Christian Kirk-esque, but it's going to be interesting yeah, it's not quite that level. But I think it just made a couple deals that were handshake agreements. I think the hand is being removed from the handshake from the agent side, if I had to guess.
Yeah, so like you saw it come through and you go, oh wait, no, not Quinnen Williams, Quincy
Right.
Williams. But maybe what they figured is, look, it's all in the family. So
All in the
we'll
family.
shovel a little here. That'll help you guys take the other deal kindly. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I am very curious to see, what happens in the trade market going forward. I mean, we saw Jalen Ramsey go from the Rams to the Dolphins. It seems more and more that the NFL is becoming okay with trades. There were a couple of years there where it was like, oh, we can't trade. People maybe couldn't quite figure them out. They were reticent to make some deals. But now it seems like it's just, it's a lot easier. So my prediction is just that we see a ton of trades. I think that, that there's just so much unknown from a quarterback perspective, so much unknown from a draft perspective. And so because of that, we're going to see a lot of moves happening over the course of this week, which I think will make it really, really exciting.
Call your shot on one non-quarterback trade. Just call your shot.
Man, so we were talking before the show, like who would be some, interesting players to potentially get traded. I mean, this would be bananas. I don't think this is me calling my shot, but like, what are the Rams doing? It ain't trying to win a Super Bowl this year.
It is not.
I'll give you one player who said he might retire unless they're trying to win a Super Bowl, and that's Aaron Donald.
He did say that.
So, like, I don't think Aaron Donald, his offseason program is ridiculous. The dude is he's maniacal about the way that he's not just good by luck, right? Like the guy's the best defensive interior lineman for a reason. He works his ass off. And for a guy to do that on a team that is trading away its best players because they suck, right? They're not going to be a good team. I don't know. I mean, that would be bananas, right? I think that would be really worthy of a This League tweet. So I'll throw that one out there. I think that would be super interesting. I'm sure Arjun could probably do a better job of identifying some players that are probably more likely to be traded. But that's one that's interesting to me because when there's, with smoke, there's usually a little bit of fire. And I don't know, the Rams clearly aren't trying to win this year, nor should they be.
True. What about you, Arjun? Yeah, one call your shot.
Yeah, I think I definitely think we're gonna see one receiver, like bigger name receiver, get traded. I've been trying to pick in the past couple of minutes between Hopkins, Brandon Cooks, and Cortland Sutton, who was a name that got brought up recently. I think Sutton stays in Denver, but I can understand why Sean Payton and Patton or George Patton would want to trade him. You look at Sean Payton's offense, in the later Breeze years, it was a lot of Michael Thomas, Traquan Smith, Ted Ginn. Like you didn't really have this 6'4", 6'5" jump ball receiver. And I know Cortland Sutton's way more nuanced than just being a jump ball receiver, but you'd have to really go back to like Robert Meacham in like 2012 or maybe even a Marcus Colston a little bit to find that like a prototypical Cortland Sutton build. So I'm not sure if he stays in Denver. They've had to release a lot of guys because of their cap situation, and Sutton's, deal in the market isn't like a super high end deal, but I could totally see the Broncos moving on from him. But I think it's probably very likely that Brandon Cooks is moved from Houston, and I think he probably doesn't want to have to go through another rookie quarterback, and probably should end up in a place where he's an instant competitor.
Yeah,
you guys didn't call landing spots. Yeah, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire.
Okay,
where are they going?
Let's think about this a little bit. I mean, and I think Arjun, your point around when you said big name receivers and then mentioned a bunch of guys that I did not think were potentially big name receivers, it bears to mind how much value is out there at the receiver position, right? So the Broncos, for example, could they move Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton, right? Both those guys are big name players that I think a team would be excited about. The guy I thought you were going to mention was T. Higgins, who we haven't talked about in a while, but who is certainly a big name receiver. Man, let me think about this. Maybe Arjun, you've got some better landing spots for those three receivers.
It's tough because there's not a lot of like. I would have penciled the Bears in as a team that would have traded for a receiver prior to DJ Moore, but obviously I don't think they need one anymore. I could maybe see the Patriots making a move for a receiver, bringing back Brandon Cooks. and potentially just continuing to build around Mac Jones. Jacoby Myers is probably going to leave in free agency, and I would assume that Brandon Cooks, with like the money that the Patriots would take on, would be less than what Myers would cost the Patriots. So yeah, I think I just predict Brandon Cooks gets traded to the Patriots, even though that feels very un-Belichick like. He would be buying, or actually it would be Belichick like, because he's buying low on a player that had previously been pretty good. So yeah, I'll do Brandon Cooks to the Patriots.
Okay, like that. My initial thought was going to be, look, Aaron Donald probably doesn't want to leave LA. How do you get him over to the Chargers? I'm guessing that's like an impossibility. Is there any way that they could swing that?
I don't think so.
There's no way, right? Like, there's no chance. So I don't know. You would think that a place with a rookie, quarterback who's playing well, right, who you could, get on board with, potentially getting you to a Super Bowl would make sense. So you think, you look at a team like maybe the Jaguars, that obviously have faith in their rookie deal quarterback in Trevor Lawrence. Could he follow Jalen Ramsey and go to the Dolphins? I'm guessing they wouldn't want to trade him inside the conference if they could help it, even though that might be ridiculous. I don't know if the Eagles could swing something. The Eagles are always an interesting team because they just find a way to do these deals and recoup a ton of value, and teams are giving players away. So I don't know, that wasn't one team. Of those teams that I mentioned, any stick out that could be like more likely than others in your guys' mind?
It would be interesting. If they just lose their entire defense to free agency and then try to just like turn around and swing a decently sized move, that'd be interesting. That's what they do. That's what Howie does.
What would it take to trade for Aaron Donald, do you think?
That's a good question. Still a decent amount, even though he's like 32 and is owed $28.5 million, I think, next year off the top of my head. But you just saw Ramsey go for a third and a backup tight end. So just because the nature of the size of the contract and how old he is, I don't think at first. I think it's more just if the Rams don't want to trade him. He's owed $28.5 million in cash this year. So that's a lot.
Aaron Donald to the Eagles would be interesting.
There you go. Put it on a graphic.
There you go. The
social media will love it.
Rams fans are going to love me. All right, let's get out of here on this. Bets that we're making, anything that we haven't talked about yet that makes sense for this upcoming week. We've got some F1 coming back, so that'll be good. And we'll get on board with that. March Madness, obviously, Selection Sunday is today. So we get some good stuff there. Brad, Arjun, anything to keep our eye out for?
You go first, Arjun, if you got anything.
Yeah, I would definitely just see just have a idea of teams you're looking to target or something, and or target it in terms of division futures or potentially player to team bets that we've been talking about, and just see how they attack free agency, and then adjust your kind of list or priors after that. I would definitely say I've been kind of every couple hours just checking FanDuel or DraftKings to see if there's any new draft props that have come out. And have been sharing those with the Discord, and it's always a fun time to discuss some of those in there. So I think there's not a lot to bet right now. If you haven't bet division futures, it's probably lost some of its value, not all of it. You could probably bet some of it after free agency, but lines will probably move a little bit if some teams spend a lot. But yeah, definitely just keeping an eye out for draft props and team position draft props or draft over unders. I'm sure those are going to come out very soon. So definitely just keeping an eye out for that, and we'll be sending that in the Discord as well.
We'll definitely be diving in, and maybe we'll have some more. The Wednesday before March Madness kicks off, we'll have some more. One random that jumped out to me, I was watching Selection Sunday and some of the matchups coming out. Texas A&M looks like -3.5 against Penn State. I like Texas A&M in that matchup. The SEC is a powerhouse in basketball now as much as football. And Penn State, that was a bubble team. Not a bubble team. They're probably going to be, they're a 10 seed, I guess, in this matchup against 7 seed A&M. But I think they're outmanned in this one.
Yeah, it's I think that betting, it's so interesting. Betting on March Madness is such a crazy thing because no one knows anything about these teams, I feel like, right? And yet it's such a massive opportunity for people to bet on things. So I think there's actually a fair amount of, opportunity and value because it's just very, very hard to track all of these. I'll just let everyone know my Lakers, just unstoppable. I mean, they've been hated on, beleaguered, maligned, hated on by Arjun in this very
Yes.
on this
I
very
will continue to
podcast.
do it.
And I mean, they're just a team of destiny. So, do with that what you will. They're -3 tonight against the Knicks. I just checked it out.
You actually reminded me, George. Right now they're +110 to miss the playoffs on FanDuel. I'm actually going to go bet that because
Okay.
I will keep fading the Lakers until I lose my mind. I'm not money, but that I appreciate you reminding me. And going back to Brad's point, Brad, do you only like A&M because they destroyed your doors last night?
No, that's not why. How dare you?
I was betting the Commodores +6.5, and once I saw that halftime score, I just chalked the bet up already. So
I mean, they won 10 out of 11. You can't win them all. You can't win them all. Lost their best player and beat Kentucky before that one, but the steam ran out against A&M, unfortunately.
Hate to see it. Now that we're talking Vanderbilt Commodores basketball, that is how we know the show is coming to a close. If you haven't already, go get your PFF Plus subscription so you can see all of the live transaction grades as they happen, trade grades, signing, the whole deal. It will be live on pff.com with your PFF Plus subscription. Use promo code forecast, get yourself a little 20% off, and go join the Discord. Link is in the description. You can hit us up on Twitter if you need that as well. Brad, safe travels. Going to be at PFF HQ live in Cincinnati. Enjoy breathing the air, taking in everything that there is to be taken in Cincinnati. And we'll have a fun week. We'll be back with you guys on Wednesday evening. Peace.